Hello?
There we go.
Hey, y'all. All right, I know it's like the dinner hour and you all are here with us instead of doing other stuff, but please give us more energy.
Yeah.
That was well done.
Thank you.
Thank you to Whatever It Takes, a deep dive into Dragon Age of Veilguard. I'm your moderator, cypheroftyr, and we're going to go through and introduce ourselves, but first, because a couple of us on the panel are developers and also we're all BioWare fans, we want to say thank you, BioWare, because this game means a lot to us. Some of us got to know the developers. Bria was on the community council, and so I'm just going to say the gutting of the studio and the writers really fucking hurt. So we want to say thank you, us as panelists. And also, where did Alex has snuck off? Alex Jones is somewhere in here.
I put the water bottle. Okay.
One of the Rooks has graced us with his presence. So hi, Alex. Well, if someone could bring us that water bottle, we'd greatly appreciate it.
We were making that. We were trying to save it. Be nice. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's
I
fair.
get it.
That's fair.
I mean, we've all been distracted by
get
dogs.
it.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we have Hassan and Manfred. All right. So it was a literal decade and an in-game decade to go back to Thedas, especially Northern Thedas. I'm not reading this all at you. We are not in a corporate boardroom. We all can read. I am not reading this to you. But this is why we're here. This should be what's in the panel description in the app and on site. But this is why we're here. And this is where Mandy gets to heckle me. My friend Mandy, who's in the audience, this is her dog, and we've now adopted her dog as the judgy face you will get if you come to the mic without a question. I will tell you to go find one. I will. Everyone laughs. It's not funny. Oh, it's not funny when I do it to you.
It's a little bit funny.
Yeah, it's a nervous laugh. They've seen what happens. They know.
Judgy Susie disapproves.
Very much so.
Great disapproves.
But also, everyone's entitled to their opinion. We're all going to have differing opinions on some things. This is not church. Do not yell out from the audience, because we're on the panel and you're not. Look, that's just how it is. So, also, when we do Q&A, make sure it's relevant. Do not ask us weird questions. We were in here last night, and half the questions, A, were irrelevant, and B, we could barely hear people. So please speak clearly and quickly and have a question. Also, we all have feels about characters. Again, we're not trying to do all that. So, that said, we're going to introduce ourselves and going to start at the end so it comes back this way.
Starting with me, bold. Hi, I am Chris Kinneas, aka PaintingPirate, he, him pronouns. I'm a variety streamer, miniature painter, cosplayer, TTRPG performer. I wear a lot of hats, most of them vaguely pirate-shaped.
Hi, I'm Taru Hunter, they, them pronouns. By day, I'm a sign language interpreter. By night, I do jousting, and also a whole lot of other hobbies that absolutely are not relevant to this century. And I'm here because I have cool friends.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eugenio Vargas. I'm DM Jazzy Hands on the internet. Currently, I am the digital media specialist for Take This, a mental health and gaming charity organization. In other times in my life, I have been a theater actor and music director, a streamer, a game designer, a writer, and a big fan of the Dragon Age franchise.
Oh, that's a good, yeah.
Hi, I'm Bria Chaos Bria Online. I'm a writer and a cosplayer, and as Tanya mentioned, I was on the community council, so the fact that I can finally talk about Veilguard after so many years having to be quiet because of NDAs is very, very exciting for me.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellie-san Kirkner, they, she pronouns, also known as Kirknervous on the internet. I am a narrative designer. I've worked in tabletop indie and AAA. I have been making games for 15 years. I'm also a games educator, and sometimes you can find me making weird things on the internet and waxing poetic.
And I'm your moderator, cypheroftyr, dev for both tabletop and video games, ne'er-do-well on the internet, been streaming on Twitch. Everything stopped when this game came out, and that was all I streamed until I finished my first run. But I do a lot of various things online, and I just talk a lot, and then sometimes people hate me for it, and I don't care. So, with that cheerful note, let's talk about our Rooks. I asked everyone to send me their first Rook, because yes, many of us have had more than one run. And also, so talk about your Rook, how many hours you've put into Veilguard, And, you know, why did you make the choices you picked? I will point out, though, we are 5 of 6 for rogues.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
I can.
Sure.
So this is not technically my first Rook.
Oh, good, mine either.
So I
We
had to
don't
play.
listen to instructions.
No, well, because I don't have pictures of my first Rook.
Oh, okay. Well, I just
that is
didn't
locked
listen.
somewhere in a Bioware vault. But this was the first Rook that I did for a full playthrough, and I really love the Antivan Crows because the Crows rule Treviso.
And Antiva will be free.
There we go. And I'm actually a warrior main usually, but when they first were showing us some how the game was gonna work, Rogue really, really intrigued me, and I had a hard time the first time I was playing warrior, so I was like, well, let's change this up a little bit, and now you will take Rogue from my cold dead hands. Oh, and I have 74 hours officially.
All right, someone talk.
All right, so my Rook is not my first Rook, but because you know why, my computer died, so I replaced it. So we had a lot of time with this Rook. Their name is Ponderiva because I love the stupidity of the idea of Varric coming up with that name with the lowest hanging fruit possible. Also, Pon means peacock in a language that we looked up on the internet, and I am blanking out now because this is really exciting. I chose the Antivan Crows because they've long-term been my favorite faction ever since Zevran failed upwards into into our parties, and so that was a really fabulous experience. I played as a Spellblade, and I was the only mage out of this group, but I've played this same Rook twice, and it's been around 190 hours or so, mostly because I will just vibe in Treviso. It's a problem.
I'll go next. The Rook you see up there is Sabris Deriva. She's an Antivan Crow. She was my second Rook, actually. She was always meant to be my stream Rook. For the first time in any of the franchise, this franchise was the series that really got me into streaming many years ago. And so all of the other 3 games of the franchise, I did first playthroughs on stream. I had taken a break from streaming right before this came out, and so when I started, I wanted a little security in telling the story that I wanted to tell through playing the game on stream. And so my first Rook was a Shadow Dragon, Kunari Shadow Dragon mage, who was my self-insert, which I didn't want to do on stream. So Sabrist was his antithesis, and also just the embodiment of the sort of weird, grouchy, chaotic energy that I and my community on Twitch sort of really enjoys. I love a crow. I also have a real connection to Zevran, and so thus was born Sabrist. I have just over 100 hours in the game right now.
All right, so I made a self-insert, obviously, as my first character. They are a Veil Jumper because I went with an elf, and I thought that Veil Jumpers would be a good combination for that. I wanted to pick something also that I didn't have any preconceived notions about faction, so Veil Jumper it was. I went with Rogue because if there is a bow in the game, I want to use it. Taru Hunter's not a joke. I love bows and arrows and archery, and also I'm a ranged person if I can be, and I love that the game allowed me to play that way. I have over 350 hours in the game at this point, and 3 full run-throughs, and I think probably 3 or 4 others that I haven't finished because I can't make decisions. And yeah, they're a wonderful character, and I really enjoyed playing them. But I think I enjoyed my second playthrough character more than my first playthrough character.
And yeah, my first guy, so ever since my FF11 days, I've always done the same character for any RPG I play, which is Captain Tyrant Goidal, the most nationally handsome pirate in insert fantasy region here. So, did that again. Lords of Fortune, I mean, obviously, come on, what else was I going to do? They gave me a pirate faction, and Rogue, it was the most piratey. I usually like hit-and-run styles of play, and my characters, much like me, will always press the big glowy red button, and rogues let you run away from your consequences really quickly. Look, if you're not meant to press it, why is it such a pretty color? Hours, I'm honestly not sure, because this was my chill couch game, so I played it on Xbox, not Steam, so I didn't have easy access, but assume it was about a third playing, a third in character creation, and a third taking beach screenshots.
My first Rook was Sleaze Thorn. I am a massive Grey Warden fan, to the point that I do have a couple Dragon Age-related tattoos. One of them is the Grey Warden Commander Sigil. And because of the lore, and because I'm such a big nerd for the Grey Wardens, I had to do one. And so she's a rogue, elf, and it was just gratifying after waiting 10 literal years to play this game. Also, I felt like I got a lot richer lore by playing as a Grey Warden, especially after Inquisition. So yeah, so we're gonna keep talking about Rook as our protagonist because every game has had a different protagonist. Origins had the Warden, DA2 had Hawk, DA Inquisition had the Inquisitor, and now Veilguard has had Rook. And you know, all of us, I believe, have played all 4 games at least once, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how are your thoughts on Rook as a protagonist, you know, in comparison slash, I guess, I don't want to say versus, but in comparison to, you know, having a different protagonist with every iteration of the game, and how did Rook feel to you as a protagonist?
I'll start. I really appreciated that Rook had an immediate, relevant, and interesting backstory. I loved the way that Inquisition worked, where it was largely sort of, something happened to you, and now you can close rifts, and that's sort of all you really needed to know to start. But Rook having a history that got him kicked out of, or whatever, his faction originally, some sort of event in their past, I should say, that really informs dialogue choices, but certainly the story too, was such a fun way to explore new areas of Thedas, to explore this new story that, I mean, like we'll all say several times tonight, I'm sure, like we've all been waiting so long for. It was so great to feel that immediate connection and to have that into the story right away.
And to yes and on that, I think something that was really neat about how Rook was integrated but also moldable, maybe to a lesser extent than some of the player characters, but not, I think, as much as maybe, say, Hawk, because Hawk.
Yeah.
But knowing that there's like a certain little bit of back and forth, and how are we playing with the spoilers for this? Because we were pretty
Spoilers.
Spoilers. Love it. So knowing that there's a very willful, elegant path that Solus is dragging you along, trying to mold you into some version of him through these very cool, very kind of German expressionistic, like little dream sequences. It was really good to have a Rook that was moldable but not so free-form that there was no way that we could arrive at a place where we could make the choices that Solus would make.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think just to double down on that for me, I really liked that it felt to me like Rook had more of a character, and that helped really get me more invested. I mean, there's pros and cons either way. It's like the more blank slate, but that was where I kind of struggled a little bit with Inquisition. It was I didn't really feel that connection with my Inquisitor because they were a bit more the kind of blank slate, whereas I felt that Veilguard took me back a little more to kind of the Hawk template, where, again, the way I tend to play is a snarky little jerk. And
You can do that.
go figure, right? And the responses that I was getting from the way of playing with Rook, I felt really clicked. Like it was, again, the way I was wanting to play that character has worked really well for me. It doesn't necessarily for everybody, but it gelled really well with the personality he had. Whereas I felt with the more blank slate of the Inquisitor, I had to do more of the mental lift to put that kind of characterization onto it. So I loved having Rook as the protagonist for Veilguard. It helped with the immersion immensely.
And I loved all the different background choices. So I've played through 3 times. I've picked 3 different factions. And each one of them has such a lovely, different flavor to each other. Like, you have the sassy dad figure in Viago, right? And then you have the polycule of the Shadow Dragons. But, like, you know what?
No, I'm not disagreeing.
But, like, so you have these different flavors, and depending on your vibe and what you're looking for, your Rook can really lean into those different backgrounds that they have. And I like that they are not only connected to the story, but they're also disconnected from their faction when they start. And it's kind of that bringing back together all of the pieces that felt really nice through the game, and how you're making those connections. And I like that you're never forced into one specific way. it is like you have to be the good guy, which I love about Dragon Age because so many options, so many times people choose to be evil or whatever, but this game, we're saving the world, and that's important. And I think it's an important thing for right now too, like we need to save our world, and here we are as this wonderful Rook character who lets us live that.
I love it too, and I also love that you can literally have rocks fall, everyone dies as an ending.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. You can have an ending where everyone dies.
But you still save the world.
Yeah,
that's
by making, you make the ultimate sacrifice,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Why do you think I made that the title?
We know!
My friends are never going to talk to me again after this battle. So now that we've kind of talked about Rook as a protagonist, what are our overall feelings about it? Because, again, it has been literally a decade between Inquisition and Veilguard, and that is not a slam on the developers. I am a developer. I know how long it takes to make a video game. If anyone else wants to complain about it, fight me. So I'm going to actually start with you, Eugenio, since you finished most recently.
Yeah, hours before I got on my train to PAX. So much, right? I mentioned already new areas of Thedas. You know, I was a big Dorian stan from Inquisition. My Inquisitor romanced my Dodo, and we love him. And ever since then, right, I have been dying to see more of where he came from. You know, the animated show was really great to see that take on not Minrathous, but the region, but then to really get in there and to play and to see the city and to see Dorian, of course, come back. But we'll talk about that a little bit later in the chat. So just exploring new areas that were beautifully fleshed out. For those of us who've been fans for so long, we knew about them and we knew enough to be excited about them, and to finally get that catharsis of seeing them was really great. I think the same is true for all of the cameos that we're going to talk about here in a minute. I don't know if everyone up here is going to agree with this, but I think on the whole, the cameos that we got were exactly right. I would have loved to see more. I would have loved to see other folks from previous games. I think maybe I'm glad that I didn't. I would have liked to have spent more time with, for example, even my own Inquisitor, just to like ask all the questions about what has happened since then. But again, I think I'm glad I didn't. I think the devs were really smart here in giving you enough for those of us who love this to be excited and to feel some sort of a connection here, but letting it be bite-sized and vague enough that all of our headcanons, all of the things that we want and wish and need to be true about this world outside of the game itself can still be true. I think that was a really, really smart and effective choice.
I'll fight you a little on the campus.
Yes, please do.
Because Josephine is on here because of me, because, I mean, I know she's not as popular of a character from Inquisition, but given that we went to Antiva, she was the Inquisition's diplomat. Like, she was the one I was really, 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 really hoping the whole time we were going to see. I think she, like, if you just added her, I think that might have been, like, perfect for me as far as cameos, even though I really also wanted Dorian to mention his husband, the Iron Bull.
Yes, correct.
Look, I'm not going to be shy about my ships, okay? But a lot of things that worked for me, I mean, the combat system for me was beautiful. Like, it took me a little bit of time to figure it out, but once I did, that was such a big draw for me as a part of the game. Another thing I really love about it, this is like story-wise, sorry, was all the little quality of life things that happened throughout the game. For example, you didn't have to go digging for potions all the time. Like, when you went to a new area, your health was automatically refreshed, your potions were topped up. So you could, if you wanted to take your time and go through the crossroads and just fight your way through a whole bunch of whoever's there, you could, and not worry about showing up to Devinter being like, I've seen some things. The one thing that I wish we gotten a little bit more of was a little bit more choice connectivity to the previous games. I don't want everything. Like, I do think the devs erred on the correct side of caution as far as the choices, because this game has gotten, or the series has gotten ridiculously large. Like, I'm sorry, I love Alistair. It doesn't matter where he is now at this point. But I do wish we gotten stuff like what happened with the Well of Sorrows, and just a couple more choices like that were relevant to someone like Morrigan would have been really neat to see.
Going back to the gameplay, I have now played all 3 classes the whole way through, and I loved how each of them felt like a different class. You know some games where you're like, oh, you have a warrior, oh, you have this, blah, blah, but they don't feel different when it comes to combat? You have to be super careful when you play a mage. If you get in there too close, boom, things are over. And the or the knife and orb mage was so fun. Absolutely the most fun I've had playing, but you had to really figure out when and where and how you could get in and figure out your combos and all of that to make it effective. And then warrior is just straight up sword and board, let's bang it out. I loved the two-handed weapon so much more and just smash my way through everything. I'm like, dodging who? Blocking who? We don't do that. And I really liked that you could play in different ways and enjoy the game all the way through again in a different style. And I liked that the choices you made would have a ripple effect in occasion. So like not choosing to punch or not punch the Warden Commander. Like if you don't, you get an amazing moment with Asaya at the end of that particular storyline. And I never would have figured that out because I really want to punch that guy. And so like I went through and I punched him twice, and then the third time I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna punch him, I'm gonna see what happens. And I actually got rewarded for making that alternate choice. And I think that that's really cool that they actually went through and made sure that there was a reward for picking the option that might not be your first choice every time. And so that was one of the areas that I really liked. Yes, and we're not doing the not working things, right? Or we are doing the not working?
I mean, you can.
Okay, so one of the things I felt like, okay, sorry, I don't want to jump ahead, but I felt like it was a lot more important your faction than your race. I felt like there were so many more options and choices that sounded correct in the story when you chose something based on your faction, and as a Veil Jumper, there weren't a lot of really good dialogue options for Veil Jumper. When I went through and played as a Crow and as a Shadow Dragon, I felt like I was more connected in the story that way. But like I was an elf and there were times when it seemed like the game forgot that. Like they would have another elf character tell me something that I'm an elf, I know that. Like this isn't something that should be new or novel information. And so that was one of the few areas that didn't work, but it was done in a way where I understood the limitations of what they had, and it wasn't jarring, but it was just like a little thing I was like, huh, interesting. Like,
were any of your Rooks Kunari?
Yes.
Do you feel the same way about that?
Not to the same degree as being an elf, but there were definitely moments as a Kunari that I was like, this isn't necessary. Well, especially when I was going through stuff with Tosh. Like I felt they told me a lot of things that I'm like, well, but I'm Kunari. And again, your background isn't 100% the same as them, and like it would depend on whether or not you were part of the Kun or whatever. But like that was one of the areas where I felt it was like, okay. So faction went over your race.
So I think it really worked for me. Is I'll always respect taking the big swing and trying something new and wild and different. And obviously the overall plot of Veilguard is this very apocalyptic, very serious, very like kind of deeply emotional story. So I absolutely loved when I discovered the schlocky B-movie hammer horror nonsense that is Navarra.
Oh my God, yeah.
I love Navarra. I love the whole quest line there. It was not what I expected at all. And I loved every moment of it. I want more stuff set just there. I could have lived there and been perfectly happy. Loved that, because it lightens the mood from so much of the other stuff that was going on. I've really, really appreciated that. One thing that didn't work so well, and it ties really into the past character cameos for me, is at the very beginning, during your creation, one of the questions that guests asked is, who did your Inquisitor romance? Which basically boils down to, do you like Solus YN? My Inquisitor made one of the 2 objectively correct choices and romanced Josephine. The other is, of course, Ironbull.
Yeah.
And I spent kind of the game really excited, like, cool, let me see that, let me see what happened. And then it was nothing. So again, I definitely got the impression it's one of those things that there was plans and things got cut for time because game development is hard. But I've always been curious as to where that would have gone.
The only thing that didn't work for me is tied to not getting Fenris as a cameo because we're in Minrathis.
Yeah.
Out.
That's true.
You better pay her more than $5 for after this panel. I know.
You think I'm kidding?
I hope that $5 was worth my friendship.
Todd is never letting me on a panel again.
No, please.
So
I have so many words. I wasn't finished. These two. You know what?
Tell us about Fenris.
I want to hear more about Fenris.
No, you don't.
No, but I do.
So I'm a massive Fenris fan. He is absolutely my favorite character. I'm going to talk to you at this panel. And Dragon Age 2 is my favorite game. Come fight me.
There you go.
But also, you know, Fenris' story really resonated with me. I don't care what y'all say. I see Fenris as black. You can fight me about that too. And the way that he's written and the growth that he gets as a character, and yes, we know DA2 is short, blah, 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 but the massive growth he can have as a character and as a person has always resonated with me. But also, I'm like, we're into Vinter.
Yeah.
This man talked about maybe being from Rathus or Saharan. Saharan's on the map taunting us this whole fucking game, and we don't get to go there.
Yeah.
And, you know, Iron Bull, again, Ben Hasrith, you are fighting with the Tevinter Imperium. The whole game is fighting the Venatori. So where's Bull, depending on your choices? I mean, you know, depending on your choices, Bull may be dead. Who knows? But that was kind of the only thing that didn't work for me because everyone else really covered those. But also, Ellie, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
it's okay. So when it comes to what works for me, I think there was a huge reward in moving out of Ferelden permanently.
Yes.
And the thing that I think was really remarkable about that is especially if we've got any, who's read Tevinter Nights?
You want me to go home and read it now. Please, I'm begging you.
So Tevinter Nights is a fantastic book. I've read my copy so many times it is actually falling apart. And there are so many elements that are like seeded in that and seeded in the comics and seeded in the other media that we have about it that really does tie into these really fantastic moments that we get within Veilguard. And so I think it was in so many little ways, like getting to meet people like Taya and Viago beforehand and getting just the perfect kind of build up to who are these people that are going to be my weird squabbly adopted like papa and mother. So, you know, it's really, really wonderful to kind of go through those sorts of things. I'm gonna have a second thing that works for me because this is huge, and this is just the way the companions talk to each other. I am so glad that you can hear them talk in the lighthouse and you can hear them talk on the move. And I'm so glad that I will never have to take Dorian and Iron Bull through the hinterlands for like 15 hours just to get them to date. Because, like, so help me God, that was gonna happen in every single run I did of Inquisition, and it was the biggest time sink when I played that game. So I think there was something really lovely about whether you're in the kitchen and they're talking about food, or you're on the road and they're talking about something relevant. Those relationships, depending on who you pair together, granted, like I've got my favorites, like Tosh and Lucanus. That's that's a grand pairing any day of the week. Come on, let's go Crows. But it was just really, really fantastic. Now, what didn't work, and I say this like really carefully and cautiously, is I think from a lore standpoint, it felt like the information that we got delivered about the bigger world for the first time in any Dragon Age media, it didn't feel like it was going through this thick layer of propaganda and religion and bias, where if Morrigan tells you something in the other games, or if you pick up something out of, like, you know, a codex entry in a circle, that can be true or that can be flagrantly false, and we don't get quite as much of that depth, especially within the codex, to see like, oh, this is absolutely not true in any way, shape, or form. And a lot of it is like fairly straightforward, and that's super helpful for a player audience to just go, oh, okay, this is true, let's keep going. But I like the sort of twisted, like, is Brother Genevieve, but does he really know what's going on? And kind of like, especially with folks like Varric, it's like, you are a liar by trade.
Right.
Like, my brother and Andraste, we need to talk. So I just would have liked a little bit more of the propaganda stuff, because that's fun to find.
The only other thing that didn't work for me, because you mentioned Tevinter Nights, I didn't read the book, so I spent a big chunk of the game going, who are these people? Where did they come from outside of the people that we meet as we play through the game? And for me, especially as someone who I like to read, but I don't always have the time to read, I felt like that almost punished you for not having read or interacted with derivative media for Dragon Age, because now I'm gonna go back and read it, but I wish I had read it before I started the game, so that would be my only thing that didn't work for me. And I'm also, oh yes, go ahead.
No, I just want to say real quick, because you talked about the companion interactions and everything narrative, absolutely, but also just mechanically, what a gift that those conversations, if you run into combat, if you move to a different area, if something else happens, they pause.
Oh, God.
And when you're done, they start again.
Yes,
Because
please.
how many, right, and speaking of, right, running Dorian and Bull through the hinterlands, right, how many times do you just miss it? And then maybe you'll get it back in an hour, in 5 hours, and whatever. And that was such a gift, because particularly as a streamer, right, running through it and knowing that some of that stuff was coming, and not having to worry about, oh, okay, I have to stop moving, and if I take one more step, I might miss it, and then the audience won't get to hear it. I thought that really reinforced how important and well-written and deep all of those interactions were.
And to stretch that one thing further, some of the companions ask someone to continue, and they're the people who would. Like the fact that some people just don't even bother going like, oh, I'm so sorry I interrupted you. No. And then every single time Lucanus says like, mierda, I completely forgot what I was going to say. It's like, continue, please, you know? And it's just this really lovely, it felt organic. I never bumped against it. I was always excited that I was actually getting that content. I can't think of another game that does that.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So we know who the Veilguard are, but I want to talk about them in the context of romance. And also, we do have less than a half hour, so we're going to try to actually see all of our slides, unlike last night. I just wanted to put these slides up because I like looking at them, and they're tarot cards.
Well done.
Shout out to Dragon Age for sending me the press kit.
Hey.
Most of these are my screenshots. I have no shame. All right, so these are my screenshots. So down the line, who did you romance first? I know what your answer is.
I spent the entire game pendulum swinging between Balara and Nev. It eventually landed on Balara. I'm a sucker for a dorky, tiny science nerd.
Tosh slammed me up against the wall. And I'm into that.
Yeah.
All 3 times?
No. But it was so hard to say no, let me tell you.
Yeah. I actually had a really fun experience with my actual first Rook, in that as soon as I met our lovely Antivan Crow, I knew exactly who I was going to romance. And then we get to that mission, and I am a shadow dragon, and I have to save Minrathous. And I was devastated, and I was also thrilled, because I already romanced him in Inquisition. He's Dorian, right? Of course he's not. They are distinct and unique characters. But that was, it sort of felt like I was going down this very well-worn path for me in terms of that part of these games. And to have that knocked out of my hands real early on was very exciting. So my first Rook romanced Nev, I think in large part because that decision turned everything upside down for me. And so for that Rook, it was a bit like, well, you've made so many sacrifices for this city. Let's go all in. Let's give everything to this city. And Nev, in so many ways, is Minrathous in the story. And so romancing her was such a thrill and so unexpected for me in my first one. My Sabrist ended up romancing Davrin, which was also unexpected for different reasons. And unfortunately, I sort of had to get through hers real quick, so I didn't have as much time to sort of explore that one. But yeah, romancing Nev was a blast.
My first one, just like Taru, Tosh slammed me up against the wall. But I very intentionally romanced Emmerich on my second run. I did stream that one as well. I made Vashath Morn Watcher because I wanted to see the options that you get when you are playing the same faction. And then I have an off stream for me, Fenris as Rook. Judge me, I don't care. And he's flirting with everybody. I can't make up my mind. My other one that is also off stream, I made a crow just to romance Lucanus. But just for a flavor twist, I made Fenris a shadow dragon, and he did not save Minrathous.
Ooh.
Oh, he wouldn't save Minrathous.
No, but still.
And also, I forgot to say how many hours I put in the game. 277.1, because I had to look at my Steam account.
Hey.
Will you permit me a tiny little tangent about the companions?
If you're quick.
Okay. So, like I said, I was on the community council, and I myself am half Asian, and there were multiple other people of color on the council. And the first time they showed us the companions and the Veilguard, a lot of us got super emotional, and particularly regarding Balara and Davrin, because the game has been a little white in terms of elves, and to actually see POC elves was like a really big deal for a lot of us, and we got, like, it was a very emotional council session. And because, again, half Asian and I'm weak, this is segueing into, I saw Balara and was immediately weak at the knees and will do whatever she wants. I'll carry her things, whatever she needs. There was never a choice for me in my mind as who was gonna romance my first time. The second time, because I told myself I had to make a different decision, I romanced Davrin, and then I hate my emotions, so I deliberately made a choice in Act 3. And I don't recommend doing it. It was real bad.
Oh, God.
Wow.
So I think we had like a very similar lived experience where I met Nev Gallus and I was just completely blown away by this like wickedly competent, like cosmopolitan detective.
Yes.
And then I came to a certain decision and it felt like we have this very competent force of political people who know how to navigate their space. And I'm going to trust that they know how to do that because I was trying to go in as blind as I could. And then we had this beautiful Gothic city that I could have just lived in for the rest of my life, and I would have felt terrible if something had happened to a city of civilians that had no infrastructure to resolve it, and a really ineffective political leader. And so I saved Treviso, and the cold shoulder that I got made me, like, I didn't know if it was an option, but I had just like withdrawn at that point, and I found a really, really lovely flow with Lucanus. And you know, he reads books and he doesn't sleep and he drinks coffee, and he makes you food all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, to go back to characters really quick. So I have not romanced Davrin, but if you flirt with this man once, you get a heart.
No, once. Once.
He has so little love in his life.
He just wants a co-parent for a son.
Well, you know, maybe he should be nicer to Hassan.
Well,
Yeah.
He's trying.
He's not trying hard enough. Look, I have many feelings about Davrin, which I feel weird about because he is, you know, we finally get a black elf, you know, like you talked about. And I'm just going to say it, I cannot stand this man. Yeah, I said it, fight me. But no,
Shock that just rippled through.
Right? Well, I love the Grey Wardens, and for me, the thing with Davrin is he always is talking about how much better the Grey Wardens are, how much better the Grey Wardens are. No matter your class, no matter who you're playing, he gives you that kind of hard time, like, well, could a crow do this? Could Veil Jumpers do this? I'm like, dude, the Grey Wardens left in disgrace 10 years ago. Did you forget that?
Bloop.
Do you not know your own history as a warden? So very quickly before we have a fun slide, we're not going to discuss it, just a fun slide to have. Does anyone have any particularly strong feelings? Because I have romance feelings about Emmerich, but I want to make sure you all got other thoughts in.
I loved the romance with Emmerich. I thought it was the most sweet and wonderful romance. It's also really nice. Like, he romances you, and he actually brings you in, and the scene where he is, like, talking and he says slow and deep, I was like, huh, well, yeah, thank you, sir. And you get to bang in a coffin, which I think, you know, contextually is, you know, maybe it's not the most comfortable place, but it's definitely on brand. So, you know.
I just wanted to say, I haven't done Lucanus romance yet, but like I really appreciated, even though I wanted more Balara kisses, that both Lucanus and Balara were written, I know his writer said that Lucanus was written as being demi, and I think that a lot of times we don't necessarily get good representation for like the ace spectrum in video games, because everyone's like, it's a dating simulator, get right to the banging. And I really appreciate that like the game took the time to like meet Lucanus and then meet Balara both where they are and like respected their sexualities in that term.
Just quickly, my romance feels about Emmerich are the same as Taru's. However, Emmerich is our oldest companion, and there's a constant harping on the age difference.
Yeah.
And as someone who is close to Emmerich's age, I may not look it, it ain't clean living, that bothered me so much. It actually made me really dislike Scout Harding. Well, not Scout Harding at this point, because she's the one that harps on it. But wait, if you don't get together with her or Tosh, Harding goes after Tosh, who is half her age.
Yeah.
So pot, meet kettle. And that was just one thing that really bothered me, because I'm like, why this ageism in my perfect Thedas?
Can I just say, appreciate that Lucanus looks so short? I mean, I know he's a short king, but like, just the choice of screenshot is beautiful.
Look, it was him enjoying coffee.
I know. It's just okay.
I want to get to that next slide, but I also want to say, just because I brought the mechanics around in the last conversation too, and again here, maybe not everybody's cup of tea, but I loved the sort of status updates and warnings you would get as you progressed in these romances. There are certainly places and times for games in which you do what you want to do, and then when it happens, and that's exciting, and that's part of the discovery of the game. But for me, maybe just the way that I played the whole franchise, you flirt with everybody a little bit. That's how BioWare works. So to have the heads up, the gates, the warnings of, you're gonna be exclusive, because that's what this option means, just so you know, I found also to just be really, it made it easier for me to sink in and feel safe and ready to have the conversations. And so again, I just think the team did a great job of mixing the narrative and the mechanical in those ways.
I've got
Systems design.
Yeah.
I've got one point which I think is amazing about these romances that I'm getting goosebumps because I actually don't think I've experienced this in another game, and it's such a simple, easy thing to do, but it shows so much care, and that's the disclosure conversation you have if you play as a trans or non-binary character. And during the sort of like, what are we conversation, you have some version of, but even though I'm me, and the response is just, that doesn't change anything. And it's just so powerful, and it's so easy to implement that kind of thing. But I can't think of a single other game that says, we know that you chose this about yourself, and we know that you're communicating you want to experience this world in this way, and we aren't going to make it superficial. And you get really phenomenal options within that. So just such appreciation for that.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a fun slide. We're not going to have a discussion about it. But if you were at the Baldur's Gate panel last night, you know what's coming.
All right.
I just want to be in a Tay and Viago sandwich, and I'm not sorry.
So this was just a fun slide.
Isabella, my love.
What?
Isabella, my love.
Let's talk about hopes for another DA game. And so this is where I want to talk about the spoilers that I wanted to make sure I did not traumatize you with.
Yeah, it was a real near thing that I didn't know about that before I got here. Whoop.
So I'm just going to say this. My hope is for another DA game that we somehow get to visit Varric in the Fade. Because if you haven't finished the game, you were warned before you came to this panel. But Varric Tethras, our favorite storyteller, not only doesn't survive Veilguard, but he's been dead the whole time.
That's so interesting that is, and I get it, this is very us, right? When I saw this question, when you sent us the deck, what are we looking forward to? What can be next? My immediate instinct was, what are the opportunities and options now that we don't have our beloved narrator anymore, our beloved and utterly untrustworthy narrator anymore. I think every game has been so informed by his storytelling, and I love it, and I miss him, and I love this idea, but I think it's so I have had such a good time sort of imagining the ways in which the franchise could really take a left turn now that Varric isn't the one telling the story.
So that's actually something I wish the game had done a little bit differently, was during the end credits where there's all the voiceover at the end. I really wish, yes, I'm biased, but I wish it had been Bellara who had taken over the telling, because she's been writing stories throughout, and even though she didn't necessarily know Varric, but picking up that legacy, and a lot of Veilguard is what do you do? And I wish it had been Bellara.
Yeah.
I think we had a conversation about this way, way back when, I think a few weekends after the game had come out, and we had been playing obsessively. And I had some theory to the fact that I thought Varric couldn't leave the Fade. I thought he was mortally injured, and basically it was kind of like Niall back in Origins, and it was this sort of, his spirit is there, but at some point we're gonna have to leave the lighthouse, and what does that mean for our favorite storyteller? And I kind of was hoping for something like that pre-end credits, but I think that just kind of tacked on, so.
think my answer for all of these is kind of very similar in that I want to see the scale brought way back down. We don't need a big, like, world-threatening thing. I think there's very interesting storytelling in rebuilding. I don't, so the second point, do I want to see more of Rook's story? No, absolutely not, because I don't see a way you can continue that without completely invalidating a huge amount of Rook's story ending that people got. Like, you simply can't do that. One thing that I would really want to see more of, which I felt there was a lot of tell, don't show, was we got all these letters from the Inquisitor about how the war elsewhere was going and all the places we were at through DA2, through Inquisition, which all blighted now, oops. So I really want to go back and sort of revisit those and see what does that rebuilding look like. I think there's huge, and this is just a universal storytelling thing, there's a huge, very untapped potential in what happens after. Like, the example I've been using this for months now is anyone who's seen Frieren. Like, that is, I love that concept. I love that after the big bad is done, after all of this, what comes next? That's the story I'm most in. I don't want to see something that comes in and sweeps all of Thedas. I want, go back to like where we had in DA2, it was just all in Kirkwall. I want something on that small scale, because there's so much with the political intrigue too. Your big bad of that could be who is taking advantage of this situation? Who is now just out for themselves? Who is going to, you know, try to take control, to seize this power vacuum? That's where I want to see that story go.
Post-apocalyptic Dinnerum.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to Kirkwall. Nothing bad happens there. It's fine.
I just want the callback to Dwarven Crafts.
Wait a second.
Fine, Dwarven Crafts.
I'm a little biased, but I want to see more of my Shadow Dragon husbands. And since one of them is Fantasy Pope, I would like for some of that to be brought to light. And I think that the Shadow Dragons in particular, because of the one way or the other that you choose with Minrathous, it goes so differently. I think it would be really cool if like there was information about like what happens after, and or maybe like whichever city you pick, like you can play a slightly different version to like experience. You're either rebuilding and with the crows, or you're rebuilding with the Shadow Dragons. And I think that the factions are so interesting and they have so much meat and depth in them that I think abandoning them entirely would be not the best call. But I definitely agree, a smaller scale, we've just saved the world. It's time to bring it back to the people again.
And for me, okay, so question, who here has made the effort to get the secret ending, the secret cinematic? Okay, cool. Cover your ears if you don't know what you don't want.
Whatever, it's fine.
There are 3 orbs you can collect, and there's an extra scene. And it seems like it's setting up for the next game, because what is it that had the Qunari running scared across the ocean?
Oh, yeah.
So what is this new enemy? Maybe not world-ending, but it felt like a setup for whatever could come next. I feel like Rook needs to take a rest, assuming your Rook survived. Because, again, your Rook can die. Everyone can die. Yeah. And I was horrified when I saw someone stream the Rocks Fall, Everyone Dies ending. Because I was like, how did this happen? What didn't you do?
Everything.
Basically. And I'd like to see more about the crows. I'd like to see more about, and I'm going to be aware of this, I'm very curious about the inner workings of the Venatori.
Yeah. I think as we're talking about like bringing the scale back, this franchise really pushes the timeline forward, right? Each game is the next big event in Thedas. I would love for us now to take not just a break from world-ending main quests, but maybe let's go back now that we've spent some time in Tevinter. Let's do what I've never read any of the books either, but I think they probably do some of this, right? Let's go back in time a little bit and see a smaller, a little political intrigue game that is entirely set in Tevinter. Let's go back to Denerim way before, right? And see the history of this and that. And there's so much lore that so many of us love and know to utterly absurd degrees, right? Yeah. Let's play with that. Let's really live in some of those historical events that we all know about, but now get to maybe see, and in places other than Ferelden.
But then we can't call it Dragon Age, because we're out of the Dragon Age. I'm just being snarky.
I'm never paneling with any of you again.
Utterly untrue.
You say that now. I love you. So we actually have time for questions.
We do.
So I invite you to come up to the mic, and also Emmerich and Susie will judge you. Thank you to Taru for that screenshot, because I'm like, when did this happen? Why is Emmerich staring at me like this?
I don't even know. That's the best part. I have millions of screenshots.
Can we please Photoshop Emmerich's mustache onto Susie?
Questions?
You have Photoshop, don't you?
Here we go.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Hi.
I mean, I was going to ask whether you thought that Necro Daddy was the best, because obviously he is. But I'm the kind of person.
Can you come up toward the mic?
Speak into it, yeah.
There you go.
That better?
Yeah, much better. Thank
Okay.
you.
So anyway, Necro Daddy is best daddy. I'm the kind of person who has to buy every single piece of merch, and I have spent thousands on the BioWare Gear Store, and I was happy to do so because I thought I was supporting a really good company full of amazing people. Considering what has happened, what is your opinion on further supporting BioWare with their merch?
That's, well, A, it's not really the focus of the panel.
Question.
But that's kind of subjective. I mean, I bought this at Volante, but it's not going in BioWare's pockets.
Can I say?
What I would
Sure.
Sorry,
I was
go
like, I think it's more or less about buying merch, and if you really want to put your money somewhere to show people who made these Dragon Age games that you like them, follow the devs to the next project they do, and support those projects.
Yeah, and I would just also add on to that, remember, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. Don't overthink it. Like, if there's a thing on there that you want that makes you happy, do the damn thing. We all deserve the things that make us happy. There's so little of that. But then, yeah, like, that was exactly the point I was going to make too. Like, just find out where the devs, the writers have gone, and support those next projects too.
Okay.
Also, you can get better stuff fan-made on Etsy than what's in the BioWare store sometimes.
I want to tag on to that just a little bit, something from the dev side, because I know we're all coming at this from different places. But if you want to see more games like this, if you see value in what Dragon Age has done and the time that we've spent in Thedas, and it's hard to say that without getting choked up, show support for these games when they come out. If you are lukewarm about them, or you can't engage ethically or decently online, then don't. We have to remember that people on the other sides of the screens are human, and they're people, and they always deserve our respect, even if a game isn't meant for you. And so just, like, it goes beyond supporting via capitalism. It's like, should we and can we support people as humans and as creators and as people who love games? So.
I mean, that was the whole point of us having the Thank You BioWare slide when we started the panel, because all of us love these games in the series, and Ellie and I are devs. So I just feel a little weird about the questions. That's why I'm like, I don't know what to say about that.
Sorry.
We really want our jobs. We like working, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do you mind if I do a quick plug for David Gator's next project?
Probably not here now.
Not in this moment. Also, I know David, and I know exactly what you're talking about. We can talk about that outside in the queue room. You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I say this with Veilguard as my favorite Dragon Age game. Why do you think that this game, like, kind of, not failed, but it seemed like it just didn't resonate with both new players and old fans? You can look at this room, it's a little bit
So your
small.
question is, your question is what exactly?
Why do you think that it's not that popular with both new players
That's
and old
subjective.
fans?
Yeah,
Well,
so I
yeah.
think that I get where you're coming from, but I think I challenge the premise. I think what we were told for capitalistic economic reasons from the C-suite at BioWare was one thing, but I don't know that it is as true as we were led to believe. Certainly, I think that we can engage with the question of why is it yes or no and whatever, but I wanted to start by saying, I don't know that that premise is as accurate as we were all told it was.
I don't believe it was a failure.
No.
Go ahead.
No, 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 please.
So I think something we forget, because time is a really fickle mistress, is every single Dragon Age game is very different from the other Dragon Age games, and we've loved them for it, and we've also not always been very gracious about that. But they're more interested in pushing the envelope and finding ways to explore Thedas that are interesting, rather than giving us the same thing over and over again. And so, if we say, hey, great job, no notes, and then we get, we tell the chef, surprise us, we can't be unhappy when we are surprised. So I think it's a lack of, it's a lack of flexibility as players to kind of find something else after you've spent, some time away from the project. And that's on us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think especially with this franchise, like to your point, there's plenty of people who have insisted the series has sucked ever since Origins. Like and they're mad because they just wanted more of that. And so it's okay, you can't satisfy everybody. And unfortunately, the nature of social media is the negative voices are always going to be the ones that are the loudest. So, yeah.
Bria.
I'll just say that 10 years is a long time, and I think that for some fans, the game was not the game that they wrote in their heads, and they were never able to come to terms with that. And I would not say that is the devs' fault or anyone working on the game. If you want an orange and someone hands you an apple and they tell you it's an apple and you bite into it and expect it to be an orange, that's on you.
And I will just flat out say it. Someone is watching something, or I hear something outside, sorry. I'm just going to say this. The grifter tourists who are never going to play this game, never going to support BioWare, the devs, are the ones who ran with the narrative. It was a failure because it wasn't what they wanted. And like Bria said, there are people who wait a decade. I waited a decade. I was in tears when I finally got to play this game at home because it's what I personally wanted and it made me happy. But I'm not going to tell someone who didn't like the game that, oh, it was a failure because it wasn't what a bunch of people who are never going to support the game wanted. We see this with every game that is not supporting the white male power fantasy. And I'm just going to say it. Because we get a bunch of brown folks in the game, we get a bunch of queer folks in the game, and oh no, it's so terrible, it's so woke. You were never going to play the game. Or go on Steam, see that 200 hours with a thumbs down. I don't spend 200 hours on something I don't like.
Also, I will personally fight everyone who said, "Oh, the game's too happy and cheery."
No,
that village, the one you go to in the forest, that gave me nightmares the first time they showed it to us. So there's a whole lot of BS coming out of those mouths.
So the TLDR is saying the game is a failure is a very subjective opinion. So I don't think it was a failure, and I don't think anyone up here thinks it was a failure. But we can talk about that outside. We actually have a couple minutes left. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, there's a...
All right, we're going to try to get both of you.
So I absolutely love the changes that they made in the combat and the play style between all the different games. Like I found Origins skill trees a little bit clunky, and then it got a little bit better, and a little bit better, and a little bit better.
And your question?
Did any of you find it really jarring that you went from the way you could sort of switch between characters and you have all their skills, and you could have, I think, up to 8 skills or 7 or 8 skills in Dragon Age 3 or in Inquisition that you could cycle through on your character, to all of a sudden you have 3.
I think it's just a matter of adjusting to a different game system. I don't play as many modern games personally, so it took me a little bit more time to get my hands around the skill tree, but to me it wasn't any different than going from DA2 to Inquisition.
The only thing I found jarring was I was the only mage out of everybody here, so people were constantly screaming my name because I was about to die. But that's a skill issue.
Have you considered not dying?
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Morgan.
Hello, thank you. I also am a huge fan of the franchise, obviously, but I guess my question is, in hearing just some of the questions other people have asked, and just hearing everything that you're saying as people who are developers, streamers, who are all coming at this from different places, what is the best way? Do you see a future for the franchise with all of the nastiness that has been thrown at the game from people, because there has been a lot? And if so, what is the best way that we as fans moving forward can support that? And because I'm not a developer, I'm not a streamer, I'm just a gamer, I'm a fan.
So because we are sub 1 minute, basically it sounds almost like the question we already answered. about supporting devs. Be vocal. Tell the developers you like the game. If they post about it, say, yes, I love this game. And if there's a future, I'm going to be bleak and say, I don't think so right now. And that breaks my heart to say.
But if and when anything, right, ever gets announced in any way, shout it to the rooftops. We've talked about voting with our wallets, we've talked about engaging with the devs, but you know, unfortunately, the hellscape that we live in now, we have to tell the people with the purse strings that we want it. So as soon as you hear anything, you must be louder than the naysayers. And that's hard. But we can do that if that time comes.
Yeah, and doing things like this is that show up to Dragon Age panels at conventions, you know, the Dragon Age fan merch. Write your fan fiction, right? Anything you do to engage with it, because as long as there's that continual audience, it'll always keep it bubbling, and eventually the purse strings are going to go, people are still interested in that, maybe we should do something. So keep the passion alive in a positive way.
And as one of the writers on the project had said, like, it's not something that belongs to any given place anymore. It belongs to all of us, and it belongs to everybody in this room and everybody that loves Thedas and has found a home there. And so whether or not a game ever gets made, I think that's not the point. I think the point is, can we support each other and can we support projects that embrace these kinds of worlds and these kinds of people so we can make spaces for ourselves.
And we are exactly at time. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For those of us that can't stick around, we will get ourselves together, get out of this room for the next panel, and I forgot the room number, but head down toward the queue room.
And go read to Winter Nights, please. I'm begging you.